A pregnant single mom with only $20 left made a decision everyone called foolish. She bought a storage unit full of junk that no one else wanted. She was searching for something she could sell to survive. Instead, she uncovered a hidden wooden box that had been waiting 42 years to be opened. What she found inside didn't just change her life. It revealed a heartbreaking family secret that would reunite people who had lost each other forever. Stay with me, because if you leave now, you'll miss the one discovery that changed everything. Emma Brooks was 28 years old, 8 months pregnant, completely alone, and just $20 away from making the biggest mistake or the greatest discovery of her entire life. In less than 24 hours, she would uncover a secret that had been hidden for more than 40 years, a secret buried beneath forgotten memories, locked away inside a dusty storage unit that everyone else dismissed as worthless junk. But before that unbelievable moment, Emma had already lost almost everything. 3 months earlier, she had walked into work expecting another ordinary Monday morning. Instead, she walked out carrying a cardboard box filled with framed photos, a coffee mug, and the last pieces of the life she thought she was building. After 6 loyal years as an accountant for a manufacturing company outside Des Moines, Iowa, she was told her position had been eliminated. It isn't personal. Those 3 words echoed in her mind every night afterward. The severance money disappeared faster than she ever imagined. Rent, groceries, prenatal appointments, prescriptions, electricity, every bill arrived with perfect timing while every job application disappeared into silence. Then came the message that hurt far worse than losing her career. Her boyfriend, Daniel, sent only one text. "I'm sorry. I'm just not ready to be a father." No phone call. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. Emma never heard from him again. Now every morning began exactly the same way. She would wake before sunrise, stare at the cracked ceiling of her tiny apartment, place both hands over her growing belly, and whisper the same promise to the little girl growing inside her. "I don't know how, but I'm going to protect you." Even when she wasn't sure, she believed it herself. The collection notices piled higher on the kitchen counter. Her landlord had already posted the first eviction warning. Her savings account had reached 0. The credit card she swore she'd never abuse was nearly maxed out. Her doctor had started warning her that the stress was pushing her blood pressure into dangerous territory. "If you don't slow down," the doctor had said gently, "you could put both yourself and your baby at risk." "Slow down." Emma almost laughed. How could she rest when every hour she wasn't earning money brought her closer to losing everything? Then, late one sleepless night, while scrolling through local classifieds, one tiny advertisement caught her attention. "Storage unit auction, everything must go, no minimum bid." She didn't know why she clicked it. Maybe desperation, maybe hope, maybe fate. The next morning, she found herself standing in the middle of an industrial storage yard on the outskirts of Cedar Ridge, Missouri, surrounded by experienced bidders who looked like they'd spent decades turning abandoned property into profit. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Emma didn't. She only knew she had one last $20 bill folded inside her wallet. If she spent it, there would be no backup plan. No safety net. Nothing. When the rusted metal door of Unit 117 rolled upward, sunlight spilled across piles of forgotten furniture, broken lamps, dusty boxes, faded quilts, and water-damaged cabinets. The professional buyers barely looked inside. One after another, they shook their heads. Worthless. Nothing but trash. Not worth hauling away. Within seconds, nearly everyone had walked away. The auctioneer sighed. "Do I hear $20? Silence. Emma felt her heart pounding against her ribs. She couldn't explain it. There was nothing inside that unit anyone would call valuable. Nothing except a strange feeling she couldn't ignore. Almost without thinking, she raised her paddle. "I'll take it." The hammer slammed against the wooden block. "Sold." A few people laughed as they walked toward the next auction. One man even muttered, "Congratulations, you just bought yourself a landfill." Emma forced a nervous smile, but inside, fear washed over her. She had just spent the last cash she owned on a pile of abandoned belongings that everyone else believed was worthless. What she couldn't possibly know was that hidden beneath those forgotten boxes, protected by layers of old blankets, waiting patiently through decades of silence, was a single wooden keepsake box. And inside that box rested the answer to a mystery that would not only rewrite Emma's past, it would forever change the future of the child she hadn't even met yet. Emma barely slept that night. The receipt for Unit 117 sat on the tiny kitchen table beside a stack of overdue bills, its faded ink reminding her that she had just spent the last $20 she owned on something every experienced buyer had mocked. More than once, she questioned her decision. Maybe they were right. Maybe she had let desperation cloud her judgment. But every time doubt crept in, her baby kicked gently beneath her ribs, as if reminding her that giving up was no longer an option. The next morning, before sunrise, Emma borrowed a dented pickup truck from her elderly neighbor, Mr. Howard. He was 73, retired from construction, and one of the few people who still believed kindness cost nothing. "You shouldn't be lifting heavy furniture in your condition," he warned, as they drove toward the storage facility. Emma smiled faintly. "I shouldn't be worrying about eviction either. But life doesn't always ask permission." "Mr. Howard looked at her for a long moment before nodding silently. When they unlocked Unit 117, the stale smell of dust and old wood drifted into the cool morning air. In daylight, the place looked even worse. Broken picture frames leaned against cracked dressers. Boxes had collapsed under years of moisture. Spiderwebs stretched from shelf to shelf like abandoned curtains. It looked less like someone's forgotten possessions and more like the remains of a life slowly erased by time. They began working methodically. The first few hours brought little encouragement. Most boxes contained chipped dishes, outdated magazines, worn-out blankets, tangled extension cords, and faded Christmas decorations. Nothing worth selling. Nothing that could rescue Emma from the growing mountain of debt waiting at home. By noon, sweat soaked through her shirt despite the cool weather. Her lower back burned. Her swollen feet throbbed inside her sneakers. She leaned against an old filing cabinet, breathing carefully while one hand rested protectively over her stomach. "You okay, mister?" Howard asked. Emma nodded. "I have to be." They continued. Near the back wall stood an old oak rocking chair hidden beneath a stained canvas sheet. When Emma pulled the cover away, both of them froze. The wood beneath the dust glowed with rich walnut tones. Every curve had been carved by hand. The runners moved smoothly without a single squeak. "Mr. Howard ran his weathered fingers across the polished armrest. "This isn't ordinary furniture," he whispered. "This was made by someone who loved their craft." He turned the chair over, examining a faded maker's stamp hidden underneath. "I've seen one like this before." Emma looked at him hopefully. "Is it valuable?" He smiled. "If it's authentic." He paused dramatically. "Wortstos, I'd say somewhere between $400 and $600. Emma stared at him. $600. That wasn't just money. That was another month of rent, groceries, prenatal vitamins, electricity. For the first time in months, hope didn't feel impossible. She carefully loaded the chair onto the truck, promising herself she'd photograph it as soon as she got home. But something strange happened as they cleared more space inside the unit. The deeper they went, the less random everything appeared. The furniture matched. The books belonged to the same person. Boxes were labeled in identical handwriting. Kitchen towels had been folded with almost obsessive precision. Family photographs had been removed from every frame. Whoever owned this unit hadn't simply abandoned their belongings. They had carefully erased themselves. Emma couldn't stop thinking about that. People leave furniture. People leave clothes. But they don't usually remove every single photograph. "What happened to you?" she whispered into the silent room. No answer came. Only the distant hum of traffic outside. Late that afternoon, while sorting through a stack of neatly folded quilts near the back corner, Emma noticed something odd. One quilt felt unusually heavy, much heavier than fabric should. She unfolded it carefully. Nothing. She lifted another. Still nothing. Then, beneath the third quilt, her fingertips struck polished wood. Not furniture. A box. Small enough to carry with both hands. Dark mahogany. Its surface was decorated with intricate carvings of twisting vines and blooming roses, every detail still astonishingly sharp despite decades of storage. Unlike everything else in the unit, the box wasn't dusty. It looked almost protected, as though someone had intentionally hidden it beneath layers of blankets, hoping no one would ever find it. Or, perhaps hoping that someday, the right person would. Emma's heartbeat quickened. She slowly brushed her fingers across the brass latch. It was cool against her skin. Unopened. Untouched. For years. "Mister," Howard stepped closer. "What do you suppose is inside?" Emma didn't answer. Something deep inside her told her this wasn't just another forgotten keepsake. Every instinct she had screamed that whatever rested inside this little wooden box had once meant everything to someone. And somehow, for reasons she couldn't explain, she suddenly felt that it might mean everything to her, too. Taking a slow breath, Emma wrapped both trembling hands around the delicate brass clasp. "Untouched, unforgettable," and gently lifted it open. The brass latch released with a soft click that echoed through the silent storage unit. Emma held her breath. For just a second, she hesitated. Opening the box felt strangely personal, almost as though she were about to step into someone else's memories without permission. Then another tiny kick came from inside her belly. She smiled faintly. "Okay, little one," she whispered. "Let's see what someone wanted the world to remember." Very carefully, she lifted the lid. Inside was no treasure. No cash. No jewelry sparkling in the afternoon light. At least, not the kind of treasure anyone expected. Everything inside had been arranged with extraordinary care. A bundle of faded envelopes tied together with a pale blue ribbon. Several black and white photographs. A tiny silver baby bracelet. An antique gold locket decorated with delicate flowers. And beneath them all, a folded birth certificate. Emma frowned. Whoever packed this box hadn't simply stored old belongings. They had preserved a life. She reached for the top photograph. It showed a young woman standing beneath a blooming cherry tree, laughing as the wind swept strands of dark hair across her face. She couldn't have been older than 20. There was something hauntingly familiar about her expression. Not the hairstyle, not the clothes, the eyes. Emma stared for several seconds. Those eyes. They looked almost identical to her own. She quickly turned the photograph over. Written in elegant blue ink were just 4 words. Elizabeth Carter Spring, 1974. Emma swallowed hard. She picked up another photograph. The same young woman sat beside a handsome college student on a wooden park bench. Both were laughing so naturally that whoever had taken the picture had clearly captured an unguarded moment. On the back, someone had written, "Elizabeth and Michael, our favorite place." She smiled sadly. Who were they? What happened to them? Why had these memories been hidden away? Her curiosity deepened as she untied the faded ribbon around the stack of letters. Every envelope carried the same graceful handwriting. "My dearest Elizabeth, Most were signed simply, Mother. Emma unfolded the first letter carefully. The paper had become thin with age, but every word remained perfectly readable. Your father still refuses to forgive what happened. He believes time will erase the shame. I know it won't. No mother forgets her child. Neither will you. Emma froze. Her eyes raced back across the page. Your child. She reached for another letter. Then another. Each one revealed another fragment of a story. A frightened young woman. A powerful father obsessed with reputation. A pregnancy hidden from neighbors. A baby surrendered for adoption. A daughter never forgotten. Emma's chest tightened. She wasn't reading ordinary family correspondence. She was witnessing decades of heartbreak. She unfolded the birth certificate lying beneath the letters. Elizabeth Marie Carter. Born. April 18th, 1954. Columbus Memorial Hospital. Emma's pulse suddenly quickened. She knew that hospital. She had been born there too. Coincidence. It had to be coincidence. Thousands of babies had been born there. Yet something inside her refused to dismiss the feeling growing stronger with every page. She picked up the tiny silver bracelet. It was much too small for an adult. A baby's bracelet. Its polished surface had dulled over time, but one engraved word remained perfectly clear. Elizabeth. Not the baby's name. The mother's. Almost as though someone wanted to remember who had loved the child. Even after the child was gone, Emma's eyes filled with tears she didn't fully understand. She gently opened the antique locket. Inside were two tiny photographs. On one side, Elizabeth, smiling softly, young, hopeful. On the other, a newborn baby wrapped tightly in a hospital blanket. The infant's face was barely visible. No name, no date, nothing. Only a tiny pink hospital identification band around the baby's wrist. Emma felt an unexpected ache deep inside her chest. Without thinking, she rested one hand over her own unborn daughter. What happened to you? She whispered. What happened to both of you? Mr. Howard had remained respectfully silent until now. Finally, he spoke. Those aren't keepsakes someone forgets. Emma looked up. What do you mean? He carefully picked up one of the letters without opening it. Furniture gets abandoned. Clothes get abandoned. But nobody hides photographs. Love letters. Oh, and a baby's bracelet beneath 3 quilts unless they're trying to protect something. His words lingered heavily between them. Protect something. Or protect someone. Emma slowly gathered every item back into the wooden box. As she reached for the bottom velvet lining, her fingertips brushed against something unusual. It didn't feel like wood. It felt hollow. She frowned. The inside dimensions of the box didn't match its outer shape. Very gently, she pressed along one corner. A tiny wooden panel shifted. Click. Mr. Howard's eyes widened. Did you hear that? Emma nodded silently. There was another compartment, hidden beneath the velvet, one that no casual buyer would ever discover. Her heart hammered so loudly she could hear it. She slid her fingernail beneath the loose panel and slowly lifted it away. Inside rested only 2 things: a small leather-bound address book and a single cream-colored envelope. Unlike every other letter, this one looked almost new. Across the front, written in beautiful flowing handwriting, were 6 simple words that made Emma's entire body go still. To my daughter. The storage unit disappeared around her. The dust. The boxes. The afternoon sunlight. Everything faded into silence. Emma could hear nothing except the steady beating of her own heart. And the tiny heartbeat of the child growing inside her. Because for the first time since opening the wooden box, a terrifying possibility entered her mind. What if this wasn't simply someone else's forgotten story? What if, somehow, it had always been waiting For her, Emma couldn't bring herself to open the envelope. Not yet. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the elegant handwriting across the front. To my daughter. Those 3 words echoed through her mind like a whisper carried across decades. Her daughter. Whose daughter? Elizabeth's. Or was it only coincidence? She wanted to believe there had to be a logical explanation. There always was. Yet logic had become harder to hold on to with every discovery inside the wooden box. Mister. Howard gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to read it here. Emma nodded, exhaling slowly. He was right. This storage unit filled with dust, broken furniture, and forgotten memories was hardly the place to uncover what might be the most important letter of someone's life. She carefully placed the envelope back inside the box, wrapped everything in one of the old quilts, and carried it home as though she were protecting something fragile enough to break with a single careless step. That evening, rain tapped softly against the apartment windows. The tiny living room felt unusually quiet. Emma made herself a cup of tea, though she barely touched it. Instead, she sat at the worn kitchen table with the wooden box resting in front of her. The room held almost nothing of value. Second-hand furniture, peeling paint, a refrigerator that hummed louder than it cooled, unopened bills scattered across the countertop. For months, those bills had been the center of her universe. Every decision had revolved around survival. How to pay rent, how to afford diapers, how to keep the lights on. She had believed money was the biggest problem in her life. Now, those overdue notices suddenly seemed much smaller, because lying inches away from her was something money could never buy. The truth. She finally reached for the envelope. Its seal had never been broken. Whoever placed it inside that hidden compartment had intended only one person to read it. Emma hesitated. What if I'm opening something that doesn't belong to me? The thought weighed heavily on her conscience. Yet another thought answered almost immediately. Then why was it hidden? Why remove every family photograph from the storage unit, but protect this box? Why create a secret compartment no one would accidentally discover? It didn't feel like something meant to stay lost forever. It felt as though someone had desperately hoped the right person would eventually find it. Taking a deep breath, Emma carefully opened the envelope. Inside rested several folded pages. The handwriting matched the older letters. Elegant, patient, steady. She began reading. My precious daughter, if these words have found you, then life has done something I stopped believing was possible. For years, I searched for you in every crowd. Every birthday, I wondered what you looked like. Every Christmas, I imagined how old you had become. Not one single day passed that I forgot you. Emma stopped. A lump formed in her throat. She placed one trembling hand over her mouth. Every sentence carried a kind of pain that couldn't be invented. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exaggerated. It was heartbreak distilled into words. She continued. They told me forgetting would become easier. They lied. You never forget the child you held only once. Tears slipped silently down Emma's cheeks. She instinctively rested her other hand across her pregnant belly. Without realizing it, she began gently rubbing small circles over the place where her daughter usually kicked. For the first time, she truly understood what those words meant. She hadn't even met her little girl yet, and already the thought of losing her felt unbearable. How had Elizabeth survived 40 years carrying that emptiness? Had she survived at all? The question haunted Emma. She kept reading. If you are reading this, perhaps you have questions. Perhaps you are angry. You have every right to be. But please believe one thing before anything else. I did not abandon you because I didn't love you. I let you go because I had no power to keep you. I was young. I was frightened. And people with far more power than I possessed made decisions for both of us. Emma closed her eyes. Those words struck something deep inside her. Until now, She had spent months consumed by bitterness. She blamed the company that laid her off. She blamed Daniel for walking away. She blamed herself for trusting the wrong person. But suddenly, she wondered how many stories she had judged without knowing the whole truth. How many people had appeared heartless, when, in reality, they had simply been powerless. That realization changed something inside her. Not all wounds came from cruelty. Some came from impossible choices. Late that night, Emma spread every photograph across the kitchen table. She examined each face again. Elizabeth, the young man named Michael, an older couple standing outside a farmhouse, a little church with handwritten dates on the back. Every picture was another piece of a puzzle. And for the first time, Emma stopped asking, "How much is any of this worth?" Instead, she asked, "Who are these people? What happened to them? Is anyone still alive? And why does this story feel so strangely connected to mine?" She looked toward the tiny crib she had begun assembling in the corner of the apartment. Her daughter would soon enter the world. One day, that little girl would ask where she came from, who her family was, what kind of people had loved her before she was born. Emma suddenly realized something that took her breath away. A child doesn't inherit only a name. A child inherits a story, and somewhere beyond those faded photographs and forgotten letters, someone's story remained unfinished. Emma quietly folded the letter, returned it to its envelope, and looked at the address book that had been hidden beside it. She hadn't opened it yet, but now she knew she had to, because deep inside, she no longer believed she had stumbled onto an abandoned storage unit by accident. She believed she had been entrusted with a promise left waiting for decades, for someone willing to finish the story that everyone else had forgotten. And before the night was over, Emma made a decision that would change the course of her life forever. She wasn't going to sell the contents of Unit 117. She was going to find Elizabeth Carter. Whether that journey led to hope or heartbreak, she needed to know the truth. The following morning, Emma woke before dawn. For the first time in months, her mind wasn't racing with overdue bills or job applications. Instead, she was thinking about a woman she had never met, Elizabeth Carter. The name had become impossible to ignore. Emma carefully packed the wooden box, the photographs, the letters, and the leather address book into a canvas tote before driving to the Cedar Ridge Public Library. If there was even the smallest chance of finding Elizabeth or learning what had happened to her, this was where the search had to begin. The library was nearly empty when she arrived. Rows of old newspapers, genealogy records, city directories, and public archives stretched farther than she expected. A gray-haired librarian named Margaret Collins noticed the overflowing folder in Emma's arms. "You look like someone searching for more than a book," Margaret said with a warm smile. Emma hesitated before answering. "I think I'm trying to find someone's life." Margaret didn't laugh. Instead, she quietly led Emma toward the genealogy room. "You'd be surprised how many lives are hidden in old records." For hours, Emma searched through digital archives. She typed Elizabeth Carter into every database she could find. Hundreds of results appeared. Too many. Different cities, different birth dates, different people. Each dead end chipped away at the hope that had carried her there. By early afternoon, frustration was beginning to replace determination. Then Margaret returned, carrying several dusty city directories from the 1970s. "These were never digitized," she explained. "Sometimes the answers aren't online." Emma carefully flipped through page after page. Businesses, addresses, telephone listings. Nothing until tape. There it was. Carter, Elizabeth M. A single address. Not in Cedar Ridge. Not even in Missouri. It was a small town called Ashford, nearly 2 hours away. The listing dated back to 1978. Her heartbeat quickened. It wasn't proof, but it was the first real lead. The leather address book offered another surprise. Most of the pages contained names that had faded beyond recognition. But one entry remained perfectly legible. St. Anne Adoption Services. Beneath it, a phone number and an address. The organization still existed. Emma stared at the page for several seconds before reaching for her phone. Her finger hovered over the call button. What if they refused to help? What if every record had been destroyed? What if she was chasing a story that ended decades ago? She almost put the phone away. Then she remembered the letter. "I searched for you every birthday?" Those words gave her courage. She dialed. After 3 rings, a gentle voice answered. "St. Anne Family Services. How may I help you?" Emma swallowed. "My name is Emma Brooks." She paused. I found something that may be connected to one of your old adoption cases." There was a brief silence. Then the woman replied softly. "Can you tell me the name?" "Elizabeth Carter." Another pause. "Longer this time?" "I believe," the woman finally said. "We may still have archived records." Emma gripped the phone tighter. "But because of privacy laws, we can't release information over the phone." Her heart sank. "I'm sorry. However, that single word changed everything. If you're willing to come in with the documents you found, we'd like to examine them." Emma nearly stopped breathing. "They're important." "They could be. And if the documents are authentic." The woman hesitated carefully. They may help reunite a family that has been waiting a very long time." Emma sat frozen after the call ended. Reunite a family. The words echoed inside her mind. Until that moment, this had felt like curiosity. Now it had become responsibility. She wasn't simply reading someone else's story anymore. She had become part of it. That evening, as she drove home beneath a sky painted with orange and purple clouds, something unexpected happened. Her phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. "Hello. Is this Emma Brooks?" "Yes." "My name is Richard Hale. I own Hale Antiques." Emma frowned. "I found your listing online." She had completely forgotten about the photographs she uploaded that morning of the handcrafted rocking chair. Richard continued. "I've been restoring antique furniture for over 30 years. I believe the chair you posted was handcrafted by Jonathan Whitmore, one of the finest furniture makers in the Midwest." Emma glanced toward the chair secured in the back of her borrowed truck. Is it valuable?" Richard chuckled softly. "If it's authentic, it isn't worth $600. Emma's pulse quickened. "Then how much?" "I'd like to inspect it personally." He paused. "But based on what I can already see, I'd be prepared to offer $15,000. Emma nearly slammed on the brakes. 15,000. She pulled the truck safely onto the shoulder of the road, convinced she had misheard him. "I'm sorry. Did you say 1,500? "No. I said 15,000. And to be honest, I think that's still below market value." Emma covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Only yesterday, she had believed the storage unit contained nothing but worthless junk. Now, it had given her something far greater than money. It had given her time. Time to keep her apartment. Time to prepare for her daughter's birth. Time to search for Elizabeth without wondering whether tomorrow she would become homeless. As the evening breeze drifted through the open truck window, Emma rested one hand on her belly and whispered the words she hadn't dared say in months. "I think we're going to be okay." But deep inside, she sensed the rocking chair wasn't the greatest treasure hidden inside Unit 117. The real treasure was still waiting for her in Ashford. And if her instincts were right, the journey she was about to begin wouldn't simply uncover the truth about Elizabeth Carter. It would reveal a truth about Emma herself that would change everything she believed about where she came from and where she was meant to go. Days later, Emma pulled into the parking lot of St. Anne Family Services with the wooden keepsake box resting carefully on the passenger seat. The building was small, quiet, and unremarkable, If she had driven past it a week earlier, she never would have noticed it. Now, it felt as though every answer she had been searching for might be waiting behind its front door. She took a deep breath before stepping inside. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes approached the reception desk. "You must be Emma Brooks?" Emma nodded. "I'm Linda Harper. We spoke on the phone." Linda led her into a private office, where sunlight streamed through tall windows lined with shelves of neatly organized files. Emma carefully placed the wooden box on the table. "I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing," she admitted. Linda smiled gently. "Sometimes the right thing begins with asking difficult questions." For the next hour, they examined every item together. The photographs, the silver bracelet, the letters, the hidden compartment. Finally, the letter addressed to my daughter. Linda read every page in complete silence. When she finished, she slowly removed her reading glasses. Her eyes were filled with emotion. "I've worked here for 27 years, she whispered. "I've read thousands of adoption files." She looked directly at Emma. "But I've never seen a mother leave behind something this personal." Emma leaned forward. "So, what does it mean?" Linda hesitated. "It means Elizabeth never stopped looking." She opened an archived registry stored on her computer. Several minutes passed. Names appeared. Dates. Case numbers. Then Linda suddenly stopped typing. "I found her." Emma's heartbeat quickened. "Elizabeth." Linda nodded. "Yes." A photograph appeared on the screen. The smiling young woman from the faded black and white picture. Now older, silver hair, gentle wrinkles, but unmistakably the same eyes. Emma stared without speaking. Somehow, after decades, Elizabeth Carter had become real. Then Linda said something neither of them expected. "There's more." Emma looked up. "What do you mean?" Linda opened another file connected to the adoption record. It appears Elizabeth filed multiple requests over the years asking whether her daughter had ever attempted contact. Emma's chest tightened. "Did she ever receive an answer?" Linda slowly shook her head. "The adoption laws at the time prevented us from sharing identifying information." Emma lowered her eyes. "So she kept waiting." Linda nodded sadly. "For 42 years." The room fell silent. Emma imagined birthdays, Christmas mornings, Mother's Days. 42 years of wondering whether her child was healthy, happy, alive. The thought was almost unbearable. Linda closed the file before speaking again. "Emma, I need to ask you something." Emma nodded. "Were you adopted?" The question caught her completely off guard. She paused. "My parents passed away several years ago. They told me I was adopted when I turned 18. Linda remained silent. Emma continued. "I never searched." "Why not?" Emma looked toward the window. "Because my parents loved me. They gave me everything. I didn't want anyone to think they weren't enough." Linda smiled warmly. "They were enough." She paused. "But loving the people who raised you doesn't mean you stop wondering where your story began." Those words settled deep inside Emma's heart. For years, she had believed searching for her biological family would somehow betray the parents who had sacrificed everything for her. Now, she realized those two truths could exist together. She could honor the parents who raised her, and still seek the woman who gave her life. It wasn't betrayal. It was understanding. Linda reached into a cabinet and removed one final folder. This was sealed. We're only permitted to open it under very specific circumstances. Inside was a hospital record. The date immediately caught Emma's attention. April 18th, 1998. The same date engraved on the paperwork inside the wooden box. Her birthday. Her breathing became shallow. Linda carefully compared several documents before looking back at Emma. "I can't make assumptions, but the dates, the locations, And the evidence you've brought—" She stopped. "It's possible," Emma whispered. "Possible? What?" Linda answered softly. "It's possible. Eins coincidence, Feigungs, that the daughter Elizabeth spent 4 decades searching for." She looked into Emma's tear-filled eyes. "Is sonno?" "Is you." Time seemed to stop. Emma could hear nothing. Not the ticking clock. Not the traffic outside. Only the pounding of her own heart. She instinctively wrapped both hands around her stomach. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. All her life she had believed she was searching for stability. A career. A home. Financial security. But perhaps, without realizing it, she had been searching for something far deeper. Where she belonged. Who she came from. Why she had always felt that a chapter of her life had been written before she was old enough to remember it. As Emma prepared to leave, Linda handed her a small piece of paper. "Elizabeth lives in Maple Creek Retirement Village." Emma looked at the address. Only 45 minutes away. After decades of unanswered questions. After thousands of sleepless nights endured by a mother who never stopped hoping. The distance between them had become less than 50 miles. Emma folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds for the first time all day. She sat behind the steering wheel but didn't start the engine. Instead, she rested both hands on her belly. "My little girl," she whispered through trembling tears. "One day you'll ask me where you came from." A gentle kick answered her. Emma smiled. "And when that day comes, I'll finally have the courage to tell you the whole story." She started the engine. The next stop wasn't another archive. It wasn't another phone call. It was the front door of a woman who had spent 42 years praying for a miracle. Without ever imagining that miracle was already on its way, Emma barely remembered the drive to Maple Creek Retirement Village. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Every stoplight felt impossibly long. Every mile brought her closer to a woman who had spent more than 4 decades wondering whether her daughter was safe, while Emma herself had lived an entire lifetime without ever knowing that someone, somewhere, had never stopped loving her. What if Linda was wrong? What if this was all just an extraordinary coincidence? But another voice inside her whispered something stronger. You didn't find that wooden box by accident. The retirement village was peaceful. Late afternoon sunlight stretched across neatly trimmed gardens where elderly couples strolled hand in hand. It was the kind of place where time seemed to move more slowly. Emma parked the truck but couldn't bring herself to get out. She looked down at the faded photograph of young Elizabeth smiling beneath the cherry blossoms. Then she looked at the address Linda had written. Cottage 14? Only a few 100 feet away. Yet it felt like the longest journey of her life. She took one deep breath, rested both hands over her belly, and whispered, "Come with me, sweetheart." Then she walked toward the front porch. Before she could knock, the front door slowly opened. An elderly woman stepped outside carrying a small watering can. Her silver hair caught the evening sunlight. Fine wrinkles traced years of laughter and years of sorrow. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Emma recognized those eyes instantly. They were older now, softer, but they were the same eyes smiling from every photograph inside the wooden box. Elizabeth looked at the young, pregnant stranger standing on her porch. There was no recognition, only polite curiosity. "Can I help you, dear?" Emma opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She had imagined this moment 100 different ways. None of them prepared her for the reality. Finally, she managed to whisper, "My name is Emma." Elizabeth smiled kindly. "It's nice to meet you, Emma." The words broke something inside her. She reached into her bag and slowly removed the antique gold locket. "I think—" Her voice cracked. "I think this belongs to you." Elizabeth froze. The watering can slipped from her hands and hit the porch with a dull thud, water spilling across the wooden boards. She stared at the locket. Her breathing became uneven. Her hands began shaking. "No," she whispered. "That can't be, huh?" Very carefully, she reached forward and took it into her trembling hands. Her fingertips traced every tiny scratch, every delicate engraving, as if greeting an old friend she never expected to see again. Tears filled her eyes before she even opened it. When the tiny clasp clicked open, she gasped. Inside remained the same 2 photographs. Her younger self, and the newborn baby she had held only once. Elizabeth covered her mouth. "I buried this memory," she whispered. "I thought it was gone forever." Emma slowly placed the bundle of letters beside the locket. Then the photographs. Then the silver bracelet. Finally, the letter. "To my daughter." Elizabeth's knees nearly gave way. Emma rushed forward, helping her sit on the porch swing. For a long time, neither woman spoke. There were no dramatic speeches, no perfectly rehearsed words. Only tears. Years and years of tears. Elizabeth finally looked at Emma. "Where did you find these?" Emma told her everything. The storage auction. The abandoned unit. The hidden compartment. The letters. The search. Linda. Every step. Elizabeth listened without interrupting. When Emma finished, Elizabeth quietly smiled through her tears. "I asked my lawyer to store that box after I became too sick to keep searching." Emma frowned. "You were sick?" Elizabeth nodded. "Breast cancer? I survived." She looked toward the sky. "But I believed I was running out of time, so I packed everything that proved you existed." She gently touched the letter. "I prayed that if I couldn't find you, call Buonasa, perhaps one day." Untouched. So, was it? Life would bring you to me." Emma felt tears streaming down her face. "It did." There was one question neither of them had dared ask. Elizabeth finally whispered it. "Emma, may I ask, when were you born?" Emma answered. "April 18th. Elizabeth closed her eyes. "What year?" 1998. Elizabeth's lips began trembling. "Columbus Memorial Hospital." Emma nodded slowly. "Yes." The older woman broke into uncontrollable sobs. "My God." She reached forward with both shaking hands. "My baby." Emma could no longer hold back. She fell into Elizabeth's embrace. 42 years, 42 birthdays, 42 Christmas mornings, 42 Mother's Days filled with unanswered prayers. All of them disappeared in a single embrace. They remained there until sunset, talking for hours. Elizabeth shared photographs Emma had never seen. Stories from childhood, the truth about Michael, Emma's biological father, who had died years earlier without ever stopping his own search. The impossible pressure placed on 2 frightened teenagers by families more concerned with reputation than love. For the first time in her life, Emma understood that she had never been abandoned. She had been lost. There was a difference, a heartbreaking difference, as darkness settled outside. Emma gently took Elizabeth's hand and placed it on her pregnant belly. Almost instantly, the baby kicked. Elizabeth laughed through fresh tears. "Oh," she whispered. "She's saying hello." Emma smiled. "I think she is." Elizabeth looked into Emma's eyes. "What will you name her?" Emma had spent months debating names. None of them had ever felt quite right. Until now, she smiled. "I've decided. I'm going to name her Grace Elizabeth Brooks." Elizabeth covered her face and cried openly. "I don't deserve that." Emma squeezed her hand. "No. You deserve to know that your love survived." Several months later, baby Grace Elizabeth entered the world surrounded by more love than Emma had ever imagined possible. Elizabeth was there in the hospital room, holding her granddaughter only minutes after she was born. As tears streamed down her face, she whispered the same promise she had once made to a newborn daughter decades earlier. "I will never let love be hidden again." Emma watched quietly from her hospital bed. She finally understood that the greatest inheritance a parent could leave behind wasn't money, or property, or possessions. It was love that refused to disappear, even when separated by time, distance, and impossible circumstances. The old storage unit had seemed worthless to everyone else, but hidden beneath forgotten furniture wasn't just a box. It was hope. It was forgiveness. It was a mother's unwavering faith that one day, somehow, her child would find the way home. And in the end, the greatest treasure Emma discovered wasn't worth $15,000. It was priceless, because after a lifetime of unanswered questions, she finally knew where her story began. And because of that, her daughter's story would begin with something she had never had herself: the certainty that she was loved. From the very first heartbeat. Before you leave this story, let me ask you one simple question. How many miracles have we walked away from simply because they didn't look like miracles at first? Emma thought she was buying a forgotten storage unit filled with worthless junk. The crowd laughed. The experienced bidders shook their heads. Some even pitied her. To everyone watching, she had just thrown away her last $20. But life was writing a story that no one else could see, hidden beneath broken furniture, beneath dusty blankets, beneath decades of silence. It wasn't just an old wooden box. It was a mother's final hope. It was 42 years of unanswered prayers. It was proof that love can survive separation, heartbreak, and the passing of time. Most of us spend our lives searching for treasure. A better job? More money. A bigger house. More security. But the greatest treasures are rarely things we can hold in our hands. Sometimes they're the words we never got to hear, the embrace we thought we'd never feel, the truth we've waited a lifetime to discover. Emma believed she had lost everything. She lost her job. She lost the man she trusted. She almost lost her home. But in reality, life wasn't taking everything away. It was quietly clearing the path for something far greater. Because sometimes God or life, if you prefer, has to close the doors you've been desperately trying to keep open. Heartwarming. So you can finally walk toward the one door that was always meant for you. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you believed your story was over? When in fact, it was only the beginning. Maybe you're watching this today because you're carrying your own heartbreak. Perhaps you've lost someone you love. Maybe you're struggling to pay your bills. Maybe you've been abandoned, rejected, forgotten. Or maybe you're simply exhausted from pretending you're okay. If that's you, please don't stop believing, because the chapter you're living today is not the final chapter. You never know what tomorrow is quietly preparing for you. One phone call, one unexpected meeting, one decision, one act of courage. Sometimes that's all it takes to change an entire lifetime. Emma almost walked away from Unit 117. If she had, a mother would have died believing her daughter never came home. A daughter would have lived forever wondering where she truly belonged. And a little girl named Grace would have grown up without ever knowing the extraordinary story that brought 3 generations back together. One small decision changed 3 lives forever. Maybe your decision today will change someone else's tomorrow. Never underestimate the power of hope. Never believe it's too late to forgive. Never assume love has forgotten the way, because real love doesn't disappear. It waits, patiently, quietly, faithfully, and when the time is right, it finds its way home. A message from my heart. If this story touched you even just a little, I want to ask you to do something today. Call your mother. Call your father. Call your son. Call your daughter. Call that friend you've been meaning to reach out to. Tell someone you love them while they can still hear your voice. Don't wait for the perfect time, because one day, The only thing more painful than saying goodbye is wishing you had said I love you one last time. If this story moved your heart, please take just 1 second to like this video. It may seem like a small click, but it helps this story reach someone who desperately needs hope today. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because every week we share stories that remind us that kindness still exists, miracles still happen, and no matter how broken life may seem, there is always a reason to keep moving forward. And before you go, hey, I'd love to hear your answer to one question. Do you believe Emma found that storage unit by chance? Or do you believe some moments in life are simply meant to happen? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Your words may become the encouragement that helps a stranger keep going through their darkest day. Until we meet again, take care of the people you love, protect the memories you create, and never forget this. Sometimes the greatest treasure you'll ever discover isn't hidden inside a box. It's hidden inside a heart that never stopped waiting for you to come home.